I forget who made that statement. I think it was last year. It was a quote that was going around about working across instead of up and down.
Issa Rae.
Yeah, it was Issa. I related to that so much. It's so true because you find people, especially in this industry, that are all about the name and the idea. Like, if you really just work with your crew to establish your look and what you're going for, you're going to get there together. A lot of times people are more into the fame versus the art. I struggle with that. Like, what does success mean? And what does that look like? I feel like I was literally born to do this. Hi, this is Itaysha Jordan, and you're listening to Dreams in Drive.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 231. The past 4 years, we have been chatting with phenomenal individuals whose dream driving journeys have inspired, I hope, you to continue to keep pushing. And this week's guest, Itaysha Jordan, her story is no different. Having always been somebody who was captivated by fashion and beauty, Itaysha fell in love with the medium of photography in high school and soon realized her calling and this desire within her. She didn't know exactly how this desire to be a fashion photographer, visual strategist, as she now calls herself, would pan out, but that didn't stop her from putting in the work to make this dream a reality. So on this episode, Itaysha is going to discuss the highs and the lows of dream driving, from navigating the New York City photography scene, doing the years of test shoots that she did, building clientele, cultivating relationships, and the road to defining what success in the end looks like for her. Itaysha is going to share her personal dream driving journey and how she's been able to work with some big names and brands that you guys know. She was recently named Essence Photographer of the Year. She shot that iconic cover with Tracee Ellis Ross. She's worked with some of your favorite stars like Taraji P, Henson, Solange, Issa Rae, and more. But what I hope you all get from this episode is this. If you have a gift, you know deep in your heart it's part of your calling. Believe in what you're capable of and don't stop working until you achieve it. That was my biggest takeaway from Itaysha's story, and I really hope that you all enjoy hearing her reflect on what has got her to the point where she is now. If you love this episode, please, please, please share it with a friend. You can find us across the board, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Dreams in Drive on all those platforms. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams in Drive as well. And wherever you're listening, please make sure you're subscribed. If you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. Those ratings mean a lot. Last thing, reminder, I want to hear from you, Dream Drivers. For our 4-year anniversary episode, I want to do something special. So I want to invite Dream Drivers to send me their stories, what they think about the show, their favorite episodes, things that they're doing along their own dream driving journeys, how the show has impacted you. I want to hear from you. All you have to do is email me an audio file or a video file that's less than 5 minutes long. Email it to Raina@dreamsandrive.com. That's RANA@dreamsandrive.com. And the deadline for sending clips will be December 28th. I extended it a little bit, so December 28th is the cutoff day. I cannot accept anything after that date, but please make sure to send it because I want to use your clips to create a very special 4-year anniversary episode. All right, let's get into this conversation with Itaysha.
Good morning, Raina. Thank you for having me.
I am super excited. As we were talking about before, you have been on my guest wish list for a while. And as you said before, it was the right time, right moment when I emailed you and you were able to say yes, right?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. I was like, sure. And you were organized. It was organized. You were professional.
Listen, 4 years in, if I'm not organized, and it's like, I would probably go crazy, right?
Yep.
So, I love starting our interviews going back in time, right? So let's go to Boston, Massachusetts, right? Young Itaysha, what was inspiring you as a kid?
I had a very cool childhood. I was raised primarily in the 80s. I would say that I was inspired just by everyday life and my surroundings. And it also didn't hurt that both my parents were creatives. or I can say they are creatives, but they don't work in they don't work in the creative field, but they were creatives. And then in hindsight, when I think about it, my parents were also very young. They were in their 20s. So my mom had me when she was like 21. So when I think about, after passing my 20s and I think about that, it's like you just have a different point of view, right? So it was the 80s. It was my mom had a bunch of her college textbooks. She went to BU for a short period of time and studying like fine art painting. And my dad was a musician, and he had gone to Berklee School of Music, and he just played music, well-rounded, all types of music all the time. His albums, very laid back. He took me everywhere. It was the time of a lot of music videos, early hip hop, going outside, playing doubles, traveling with your friends. So I have a very vivid memory of my childhood and what I did. And I think that probably set the stage of who I am today. I know it set the stage of who I am today.
And it's interesting. I was listening to a prior interview of yours, and you mentioned that your mom was from the South and your dad was from Barbados, right?
Yeah, well, my mom was born. She was born in a very small town in North Carolina called Hallsboro, but she was raised up north. So she was raised between, I think she started out in Philly and then made her way to Boston. So, but still, roots are from the South from my mom's side. And my dad, his parents are from the Caribbean, Barbados. Okay. Yes, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I mentioned that because I know sometimes, like, I feel like Caribbean culture could sometimes be the, hey, stick to your books type of thing, right? But I love that you mentioned that your parents were free spirits in their own right.
My parents were free spirits, but they weren't really raised that way. Yeah. Which is interesting. So yeah, there are bits and pieces, which is probably why, especially my dad, who I consider to be a musical genius, I'm biased, but
we all are, right? When it comes to our parents.
but he really is. And I think that he's a product of that because they are my father's family is very conservative. Caribbean roots, but they've been in America for many, 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 many years. And it was kind of like a thing in that family where you have a talent, you play a musical instrument or whatever, you may sing and you do it for in church. But your real job is, something else, that type of thing. But yeah, I guess I guess I can consider him sort of like a black sheep because he kind of, ventured away from that early on.
So when you were in high school, did you know that you wanted to be a photographer? Because I know you started taking classes. And even for me, like my high school, we had to take, we took film photography. So I was in the darkroom developing stuff, which I think every photographer, anyone who's interested in it, being in the darkroom first really gives you a solid grounding for the principles of what photography is. You know what I mean?
That statement is 100% true. So I didn't know that I wanted to be a photographer. I did start taking photography classes in high school between the 9th and 10th grade. I think I took my first photography class I didn't like it. And it was the teacher. He was just kind of like blah. And then I was sort of hanging around the art department. Not sort of, I was hanging around the art department after school. And there was a man by the name of David Prifty, who was kind of like, you just can't hang around here. You can't, not really. He had sort of like he was sort of, his sense of humor was a little different. And he was like, you have to take a class, it was, so when I'm saying it sounds like he might've been rude, but he wasn't. He's like, you have to take a class. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll take a class. So the first class I took, I didn't really enjoy it that much. And then I decided to try it again. And I took it with him as my teacher. And that was all she wrote. So I think it was sort of like a natural transition to me, doing something artistic, taking a photography course. It wasn't something I planned, but I had been surrounded by creativity, my whole life. Everything was always about, are there arts and crafts? Or, I used to like knit. I forget what those things are called when you would cross hatch in a loom. I
I know
used to
what you're talking about,
crochet.
like those little, like it's a little grid, and then you use
Yes.
yarn. I
Yes,
know what
like
you're talking about.
paint by instead of paint by numbers, paint by yarn. Like I was total creative, arts and crafts junkie nerd. But I found that I always talk about how photography was my or is my way to combine everything I love, which is like art, fashion, hair, and makeup in one place. So that's just the medium that I get to express myself.
You eventually then went to college and you studied photography, right?
I studied visual arts. After graduating from high school, I veered off for a second. I went to a school. I'm doing quotations in Atlanta. I was raised in Boston, Massachusetts, but I went to school in the suburbs like my whole life. So I was just trying to get away from Massachusetts and get to some culture. So I went to Atlanta. And I found that when I was in that program, I had to start over in essence. Like I had to do intro to photography, and I already knew that
You're like,
stuff.
I know this stuff already. What you
Yeah,
mean?
because it literally, the program I was in was so good. I was in the dark room for hours. I was, with the chemicals, and I sort of had to, start over. So I was bored, and eventually a year or two later, I headed back to a home to Boston, to Massachusetts to do another program. I didn't go to an art school. I went to what was an all women's college called Pine Manor, a liberal arts college, and just to get a degree. And I looked up, I had a friend who went there already, and I was like, they have a dark room in the art department. That's all I needed. Like, I wasn't concerned about the program, I mean, to an extent, but you know what I mean? I just
Yeah,
needed a
no.
place where I could create. So I headed back up north, and I enrolled in the visual arts program. Visual arts, and then I had a concentration in photography. I actually completed the concentration for photography and graphic design. Visual arts is all around so I did like painting, sculpture, drawing, that type of thing. I studied art history. It wasn't only focused on photography.
And I think, I love that you mentioned that you studied art history because do you feel like it gave you...
Yes.
How did it contribute to your... I mean, you know what I'm about to say here. Because I think a lot of people, especially in the age of, like, let's say everyone being a social media photographer, no one's studying the art or the history of the art form. So how did doing that really help you now as a creative?
I can't emphasize enough how that program helped me out and probably would help a lot of people out. It just teaches you how to think. Art history is a lot of repetition, a lot of memorizing. Rather, you're memorizing titles and years that things were created, but you're also learning about hundreds of artists, painters, etc. And it's just really interesting. And you have a different outlook on your work. You're thinking more about maybe like the texture or the feel or the time period or what was going on in life. I feel like it's very apparent now that a lot of people aren't in tune. I think in some aspects we're getting back to that loosely, but I have to say that studying art history, for example, only made me stronger. I find like sometimes people like, I didn't go to school, I'm self-taught. In essence, besides learning the fundamentals of like darkroom, a lot of what I do is self-taught because you really learn on the field, right? What you're doing. And when I went back to the program I just explained to you, I was the only one trying to do like fashion. All my teachers were fine art, like take pictures of this object. No, it's just, it's not my thing. And I kind of was just doing my own thing. But I had this background of, studying these artists and what they did and how they did it. And I feel like it really, really, really enhanced my visual, how I see. I think it really helped. It opened me up to a whole new world.
So I have a listener question. This one's coming from Nina, and she
Okay.
said, "What gave you your confidence early on, especially as a new photographer? Let's say you graduated from college. You know that you have this desire to pursue this art form. Did you have confidence, and if so, what gave you that confidence?"
I think naivete gave me my confidence. If that makes any sense, I didn't know what I was getting into. It wasn't a situation where, like, I would say right now it's a little bit more common. You're hearing about people doing photography more. I was just going with the flow, and I was just doing my own thing. So if I back up even to high school, because I almost find my high school education more relevant. I want to say this loosely, but I just want to give an example of how I would just take my friends and shoot them. And I didn't think anything of it. I would go to thrift stores. I would say, oh, what character, what are we doing? Are we doing, the 20s, the roaring 20s, that type of thing. I just did my thing. I didn't think much about who was around me, what someone else was doing. I wasn't influenced by anything on like social media, that type of thing. So I just didn't know, ignorance is bliss, So I had this confidence in this inner drive in me that came from just loving to learn.
Did you ever feel the pressure to find like a job that people understood? Because as you know, you said that during that time there weren't a lot of people trying to do what you were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to find work easy, or did you kind of say, "Hey"? Did you hesitate?
No, so part of what is both beautiful and what can be traumatizing is that there isn't really a rule book. And I should hope that more programs today are helping, just to sidetrack a little bit, are helping artists learn about business management and different options that you have. But for instance, my mom has always worked in the hospital field. I had a bunch of random jobs that had to do with working at the hospital. I did medical billing, unrelated to her, but I did medical billing for a second in college. And when I graduated, I just continued that job. But I had creative friends, and one of my good friends, Joelle Fontaine, was like, let's move to New York. And I was like, okay. It was one of those 5-minute moments.
Was it really like that random? It sounds pretty like, hey, let's just do it.
It was really that random. It was really that because we were going around. There's no real, I'm not sure about right now, but there was no real fashion opportunities in Boston, which is what I was interested in primarily. And she was like, let's just, she's a dreamer. And she's like, let's just move to New York. And I was like, okay. I felt like I didn't have anything to keep me back. I was in my 20s. I didn't have a family. I had nothing to lose. I was working in medical billing, which is not my passion. It was just a way for me to pay my bills. And I figured I would hate to think what would happen if I never did this, if I never gave that a shot.
That's a common theme that a lot of my guests say, right? You have to get to that moment where you have that discussion with yourself and you're like, listen, what are you waiting for?
Mm-hmm. It was exactly that. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Again, wasn't well thought out, didn't have, like savings and all of that. I just did it and gave it a go. And, here I am in New York City.
Ooh, so, as we think, a lot of people listening to this show, they're creators in their own right. They want to make that leap, right? What were the first things that you did once you got to New York City to start building the Itaysha Jordan brand?
I was traveling to New York on weekends with my friends, and we were doing shoots. So there were a few kind of like online artistic communities. I think one was Muse Cube. I don't think that exists anymore. One was Muse Cube. I guess that would be equivalent to what Model Mayhem is now or was. So you sort of would contact people. Oh, you do makeup or you do this. Are you interested in doing a shoot or do you want to shoot? You may find someone that you want to shoot. So I was sort of prepping or preparing by going to New York every once in a while to do these shoots. So I just sort of built off of, you would meet one person, you would meet another person. I got to New York and I did a lot, years and years of testing.
You said years of testing?
Years of testing. Oh, yeah, definitely. Years of testing, working with models. And eventually I was introduced to, I'm not sure how, I was introduced to a couple of different model agents. And you would go in, show them your book, and then, you start working with models and you build your book up. I started to advertise myself to do paid shoots because I also, again, had to support myself.
So all those test shoots were free shoots?
Most of them were. The test shoots with the new faces or established models were free shoots. I then had to start to advertise myself as being able to help build your portfolio. I hope it doesn't sound so easy, like, oh, I just did that and then I just did that. This is years.
No, that's why I said, I was really surprised when you said years, because I think a lot of us give up after a few months, right? Like, I'm reaching out to people, nothing's hitting,
Yes.
So really talk about why that, perseverance was so important to the journey.
It is super important. The tenacity, this field is not for the faint at heart. It really is sort of an abuse if you think about it. And I think it speaks back to your purpose and my purpose and my calling. Like, I was called to do this. There were many times I was calling home like, Mom, I can't take this. I can't do this, anymore. I want to move back. And it would kind of be like, well, what are you going to do here? I don't know. But, I can't afford this, that type of thing. And something just always kept me here, or kept me going. My tenacity, that I don't even know if it's patience, because I definitely have my moments. I just take it as this is what I'm called to do.
Were you developing a style? Because I know sometimes having like a unique, I guess people can start to recognize, hey, this is Itaysha Jordan's work.
I did that, but it wasn't on purpose. I sort of have developed a look, or a main look, and I had a couple of advisors, I'm not sure if I would call mentors, who would kind of critique and give me advice. Well, if we go back to about testing, New York testing, that shaped a lot of my look. Before I moved to New York, I was a lot younger, not just in age, but, experience wise and what I thought was cool. And I was just trying to do all the things, everything, like over the top, but when you test with models and you're doing things that need to work for their book as well, they also need to get something out of it. It needs to be very clean if you want to eventually get paid by model agencies to shoot. And so I had to balance being able to make a living and providing what they need. So I developed sort of like this clean look on, let's say, a gray backdrop. And one of my friends calls it Itaysha Gray, which is so funny. So I sort of developed that. And then I did this internship with a photographer briefly, but it was to learn how to retouch, because I was like, I want my images to look like how they do in the magazines. I developed sort of a style or a look, or the way that I like my aesthetic, the way that I like for skin to look, for an example. I'm also very opinionated in terms of hair and makeup. I'm versed, I guess you could say, in what I think is cool. I think that also helped to build what makes my image look, like that's an Itaysha image.
So you were coming into it with like, I have the vision, I'm just not taking the picture.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's like I always knew what I was capable of. And so that's what I was yearning to learn how to do.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced during this early point of building your career?
Probably some of the same challenges I have, but just still have, I guess, but okay. But just on a different level, which is being, having my images look the same as someone who's more considered to be more established, on the level of being able to be shot for a publication, a magazine, knowledge of my work and who I am getting out there.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean like promote, like you were like promoting yourself? What do you mean?
Yes, I mean in terms of like promotion, like
Okay.
that making myself aware that I'm there. But I skipped a part. I think one of my earliest challenges was so we talked about testing. At one point, I burnt myself out. Like I was testing too much. Like I didn't have a direction. I didn't know why I was testing. The work was piling up. I couldn't keep up with it, that type of thing. So now I have a better gauge on that in terms of I was just shooting to shoot. At the same time, you have to keep producing work to get better. But there was a point where I think I kind of burnt myself out.
That is so important. You know why? Because I feel like people don't talk about the creative burnout, right? You think about corporate burnout. You think about when you're at these jobs where you're doing the same thing, but creatives also experience it, right? Why
Definitely.
Why do you think reconnecting and finding your why again is so important?
It's important so that you have a clear direction of where you're going and trying to stand out amongst thousands, hundreds, and thousands of people doing the same thing. You need to know why you're doing things, but at the same time, I just told you, I was doing that, but you don't learn it unless you go through it, right? Like everything in life. But for me, it was almost at one point, it was almost to my detriment, where it was like, I didn't want to shoot anymore. You know what I mean? I would come out to shoot for jobs, but I wasn't really building my personal portfolio. Like I slowed down a lot. And I think that there's still effects of that, of me doing that right now. Like I'm not shooting as much as I should in my personal time, which is, I don't want to call it a mistake, which is not good, because what you'll learn is once you eventually start to shoot in real life situations for real corporations and that type of thing, a lot of times it turns into what they want and not what you want.
And that satisfaction.
Am I clear?
Yeah, and that, like, do you feel like you're not satisfied or fulfilled then?
Yes, because when you're alone or with your own team, and I'm more of a director, a creative director, I have the ideas and the concepts of what I want to do, and I work with certain people and to get certain effects, and then you will get hired to go work on a huge commercial job, and they choose everyone that they want you to work with. So they're like, oh, we hired you because you shot this beautiful series of such and such, and we really want that same look. But then they'll go and hire several different people that you've never worked with, that you don't have a relationship with, and then you're dealing with something more corporate where they may have like 25 people.
So would your ideal situation be where you can choose your own team?
Yes. Okay. My ideal situation would be that, or that myself and whoever's the creative director on the job are so in tune, so in sync, that we both have the same goals. And a lot of times it starts out that way, like, yeah, we're really looking for this. And then you get in the situation, you're like, this is totally not what, but you have to go with it. You have to be a team player, Eventually, I mean, yes, the talent to be able to shoot, but eventually you get to a point where it's not solely about your talent. It's how you relate to people. Are you able to translate ideas? Are you able to show flexibility with those that you're working with? It goes beyond, yes, I can take an awesome picture.
I was going to ask you about the idea because, we mentioned this earlier, but a lot of people now, especially with the rise of social media, there's so much more access to cameras, right? Phones that we're walking around with. Every year, the camera's being upgraded. People are taking photos for Instagram, their personal life, all this stuff. Like, do you wish people put more respect on the photographer? Like, that there's that Birdman quote, put some respect on my name.
Put some respect on my name. I do. Like, things make me like, this is literally my life. No matter how much I try to run from it. Like, if I see a photo shoot, I'm always like, I'm automatically critiquing from an artistic point of view. There's two sides. One is technology is evolving. So it's either, go with the flow and get in tune with what's going on. And the second thing is also, let's not forget about the roots and the foundation. So I am kind of, I guess you can say, I feel like I'm always caught in between. Like, so we talked about going in the dark room and, you know, traditional photography education, or classically trained, as I joke around and say I'm classically trained. I was in high school in the 90s and I moved to New York the early 2000s. And that was like on the cusp of the big digital expand. I feel like I'm in between the modern and the old way, like the, you know, that type of thing. So I do wish that there were more emphasis put on traditional ways. I think you can see in the work, as you mentioned as well before. I feel like my education in the darkroom helps me digitally because I work primarily, 99.9% digitally, having knowledge of, adding more contrast or changing these tones, which comes from that education, early on education of being in the darkroom, still helps me. And I can see from someone who might be newer or more, learning or younger in their career, where they're missing, like an image is flat because they're viewing it only on a screen.
A lot of people too, I feel like, are relying too much on post production, in the sense where sometimes it's like, I love the art where it's like, try to take it as best as you can in camera, right? And then use the retouching to add to what you originally were trying to do. I think it's two different types of shooting. I'm not judging anyone, but my personal love for shooting is get the picture in camera and then use retouching to enhance it, but don't make it not look like what it was supposed to be. You know what I mean? I hate those over retouch stuff that I'm like,
me too.
What's going on
Here?
I've
advised other young photographers, you know what I mean? Like, cut back. I was there before, though. I'm not going to sit here and say that I never went through that. I was there before. Like when I told you, I did this internship with a retoucher at a photo studio. Their style was over retouching, and it was kind of in style too. But there's an art to that too. There's an art to the over retouching as well. And I had to pull back. So many times, I'll get someone saying, "What do you think? What should I do?" And I'm like, "Well, you should, chill out on the post production, because a lot of times it's not being done well."
Yeah.
And I also find that nowadays the style of retouching that everyone is doing is almost like carbon copy. Like, you have to be careful because a lot of people's work, it starts to look the same because they're doing this one style, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll outsource my work to retouchers, but I have to go back over it or enhance it in a way so that it is in tune with my work and my style. I actually had a disagreement with another photographer early this year because I was on a panel and someone came up to us and he was asking for advice on, what he should do. He does photography, but he wants to get into a different realm of it. And I was saying what you were saying, get the picture in camera, focus on getting the picture in camera, and then worry about retouching after. And she was like, I disagree because a lot of people don't know how to finalize their images. But I think that people are getting too stuck on that and not relying on the art of what they're capturing, and it starts to overtake the image. So I totally agree.
I know that relationships are really big in this business, right? You need to have the relationships with the photographers, the hairstylists, right? What's your go-to advice for building genuine relationships in this industry?
You want to just be authentic and build real, true relationships, and also stay connected with those people that you find that you have something in common with, because you're going to need those people in the future. They can recommend you for jobs. You can go to them for advice. You can confide in them an issue that you're having that maybe your best friend may not understand. How to build an authentic relationship is the same way that you build a relationship with anyone. I would say that you should have some common ground in your artistic vision. Either you both agree on something, or maybe they have something that they do that you love. So it's very important. Having a team that you can rely on to do certain types of things is very important.
Were you actively reaching out to people that you found interesting? Because I know, so let me give you some background, because I realized I didn't even tell you this, and you're probably like, wait, she does photography? So I would say my first love was photography. And I've been doing this, like asking my friends, like, guys, did I always have a camera? Because I kid you not, Itaysha, I have a picture of a memory for anything you need. So any of my friends like, hey, Raina, remember my 6th grade birthday party? You have the picture? I can go into my little stash of photos and find it. So I was like, wait, was I always walking around with the camera? Like, what was going on? So that was like my first love. I studied that. And I didn't study. I took classes in high school. In college, I took a few courses. And I'm just somebody who loves to document. I call myself a storyteller, though, because I wouldn't say I am a photographer by nature, but I love the art of taking photos. You know what I mean? To capture memory. So for me, it's like, I've just always been that person, kind of like you, like getting my friends to do shoots and not taking it too seriously. But now I'm realizing I'm a good, like, creative producer, in the sense that I can get all the team together, and the photographer can work, but I know what the photographer is trying to do. So that's kind of where I am now with the podcast. So I'm doing the podcast. I'm trying to get into the production realm, because I feel like that's where my gift is. So this, just want to give you that background, so you're not like, wait, what is she? I thought she was just a podcaster.
I love that. And I'm of course, again, I'm biased, but I feel like photography, or having a knowledge of how to capture an image, is what educates. That's why you're able to, link people together, because you have that vision or that eye. And it never hurts, even if you don't do it as a profession, it never hurts to be able to take a nice picture at your family function, or, out with friends, because someone is always going to be looking for that image, or requesting, send me that picture, So photography is something that a skill that you can always use. You don't retire from it. Yeah.
And people always appreciate if you have that moment to share, because not everybody's documenting it. So
how many people complain that, I asked this person to take a picture of me, they cut off my head,
right?
They can't get it.
What was the business lessons you were learning along the way? Because I think that's also something that a lot of us are struggling with. Like, I love it, this is my passion, but how do I actually get paid and keep getting paid?
That's a tough one. First of all, you have to know your worth. And that goes both ways, like knowing if you're asking for too much or not enough. And you just get secure in that. And you eventually do enough jobs where you know how much to charge, for an example. Or I have to say that when I first started doing test shoots, I think eventually I had to start asking for a deposit up front, or non-refundable deposit, so that you don't, book a shoot and then cancel last minute, or don't show up, that type of thing. I think it just naturally comes to us, like what to do eventually. So I want to say, don't be afraid to charge, even if it's a modest amount, and to always be clear with your direction. Be clear with your how you want the instructions of what you're doing to come across. Am I making any sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you don't work with an agency, right? You kind of are your own agent.
I currently don't have an agent. Okay. I decided to part ways with my last agent because I didn't feel it was working for me. So I'm coming up on 1 year of not having an agent.
Okay, because do you feel like, do you see a difference, or do you realize that you could do it, like you could still work, you don't necessarily need one?
I think I would love to have the right agent.
Okay.
And I've had an awesome year without an agent. So there's that. I think it's, for photographers, it can be a little bit more complex as you get into bigger jobs and the uses of the images, how they're being used, how long they're being used. It can be very confusing on how to negotiate those rates. But I've developed relationships with people who can help me do that, when I need to do that. But I just think that we're in a time where having an agent in the traditional way may not be the only way. You know what I'm saying? You just have, I think it also comes with confidence and being able to just talk with people, find out their budgets, find out what makes sense. Again, building off the experience of what you've done in the past.
Yep. So there is like definitely some room for innovation. Hey, people who are listening, maybe you guys could reinvent. That could be a niche for people to explore. How do you, a photography agent that works with the complexities of what photography is now?
Yes.
The big question I have, because I know a lot of people are probably like, Raina, why have you not asked her this yet? So how did you get to shoot with celebrities and these big brands, these big corporations? Because for a lot of photographers, that's the goal, right? Like you're covered with Tracee Ellis Ross of Essence. That was iconic. Like how did you get to be able to work with these brands and these big names?
Well, I've been working with Essence for many years. I want to say my first shoot with Essence was maybe 2010.
Okay.
So I kind of started out shooting maybe fashion story or beauty story with them. And they have gone through a series of changes. Essence has a series of owners, etc. So there's always new people. What you're speaking about is this past year, there is a new, what is her title? Digital, I have to look it up. Her name is Moana.
Oh, I love her. Her style is so dope. I follow her on Instagram. Yeah.
She saw something that I shot and was like, why aren't we shooting with her for covers? You know, because I had never shot a cover for Essence. My first cover was of Issa Rae.
The New Orleans shoot? Was that New Orleans?
Yeah, yes, it was. Yep. And it got a huge response, you know, and I think I was able to show Issa in a way that she hadn't been seen before. And so it just grows, you know, you work with the team and, you know, working with celebrities is a whole nother thing. You need to be able to translate their ideas and their concepts too, and make sure that you have them in mind. And there are a lot of people there. They have PR, they have their manager, they have this, and then you have the publication of what they want. Again, you need to be able to, like I spoke about, being able to relate and talk and translate. So before you even get to take the picture, there's some levels that you need to cross.
So there's a lot of layers to this that I think a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. So I've not always, but I've shot, you know, celebs here and there. And you just grow. People notice it. Oh, you shot that? Yes, I shot that, you know. And it really just takes someone taking a chance on you. You know what I mean? Like, and believing in what you do.
What's your advice then for showcasing your work, especially in this digital age? Should you be posting everything on Instagram or just the best things? Like, what's the way to post your work so that people book with you or want to connect with you?
I think it's a personal decision. I don't believe in posting every single thing. I find that can be, you know, overkill. I would say post with purpose. You know what I mean? Like show a range, or, you know, if you shoot only green, you know, if your thing is shooting greenery, you know, with everything that you shoot, greenery with dogs, greenery with people, you know what I mean? Show different ways that you shoot that. I know that's a crazy example, but whatever.
There might be an artist out there like that. You never know.
Well, no, there is, but my point is like, I don't think that you should shoot any and everything. I think that you should have a point of view and a direction. There was a point where I was trying to run from people. I shoot everyone, right? I'm comfortable shooting everyone, women, men, kids, you know, well, not necessarily kids, but older people, you know, that type of thing. But people really respond to my work of people of color. And I shied away from that because I don't want to be pigeonholed. You know what I mean? Oh, she only she shoots this. Now it's like a trend, right? But for a while, I wasn't trying to get pigeonholed. I'm trying to show, you know what I mean? But that's what people really, really respond to, because they hadn't seen themselves shot in this way, in a glamorous, beautiful way. Right? So you want to show what separates you from the rest, in essence.
Like embracing that uniqueness. And I think especially
Embrace it.
As Black women, like I would say we are more conscious of that. Do you ever feel like that? Because it's like, hey, I know people see me as a Black photographer, but I can do other things too. So
right.
It's like this like fine line between how do you have, let me give you an example. I think this makes sense. What I'm trying to say. So even with this podcast, when I first started it, it was not only for women of color. And I just think meaning like I wanted to interview all types of people on the show. But it just so happened that my network in the beginning was women of color, right? And I feel like the episodes that people resonate are with when they hear the stories of women of color or Black women who are doing things they always wish that they could, or it gives them that, it's a different type of motivation or inspiration when you know, like, hey, this person looks like me. But at the same time, I always wonder, like, am I missing out by not having, like, more of this type of person on my show? But then I realized it's okay. Like, I can have both, but just know that the thing that people really appreciate about this show, or not the only thing, but they love those stories of women that look like them too. So there is importance to that.
Yeah, it goes back to, I think, the calling, and who you're resonating with. And that's the perfect, description of what that is. So I've become more comfortable with that, and that's what I primarily post, even though I do other things. So you can go to my website, which needs to be drastically updated, and you can see a wide variety of things, of my versatility. I struggle with that because I still consider myself to be, I always used to say I can shoot the most hood rapper and then go shoot something that's super high fashion, all in the same breath, without hesitation.
Yeah, because at the same time, you don't want to be pigeonholed and people aren't reaching out to you because they're like, oh, she only shoots that. Like, wait, no, I can do everything.
People naturally do that, right? People naturally box you into things. People naturally, or if there's something that you did that someone really loved, you're like, oh, she shoots this and she does that, that type of thing, even though you do more. So you just want to be strategic, I think, but at the same time, show a focus of what you're shooting. Because when you're all over the place, now, again, when we talk about different layers and different levels to things, when you might be younger or newer in the game, sometimes you are experimenting. That's the whole point. You're figuring out, what it is that you're into and what you want to do. But I think having a direction and a clear voice visually, one thing I want people to think about is photography as a foreign language. Like, you speak a visual language. So think about how you communicate without speaking, without talking, as a form. And I think that can help.
Itaysha, do you feel like you've reached success?
Do I feel like I've reached success? In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Defining what success is something that I ask myself continuously. Like, that's a conversation that I'm having all the time with my close, like, creative friends. Like, what is success? What does that mean? It's not only money related. I think it's feeling good and feeling happy and reaching the masses. I feel like I'm starting to do that. It's so interesting because I have been doing this a while, and there was something that I was nominated for, and you needed to be considered not inspired. You need to be considered, what is the term that they use? You needed to be considered basically a photographer that is, new and flourishing type of thing. And I didn't get picked. And so I was kind of like bothered by that, because I felt like, no, I didn't just start yesterday, but at the same time, I'm not booked every day. That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? In a lot of ways, I feel like I'm helping to pave this road that like a dirt road that hasn't yet been tarred, if you will, because there aren't any rules. So I'm like, well, I'm not a household name. I didn't just start yesterday. Emerging, that's the term, an emerging photographer.
But you've been doing this, and it's funny because you've been doing this for like a long time, though.
I've been doing it a long time, but I'm still I'm still emerging. Like there's still people that don't know my name. I used to consider myself like the underground rapper, like people who are kind of like in the know, kind of know, but then still haven't reached above ground. I think this year was probably a turning point with having 4 or 5 covers that I've done this year, but there's still this level of I still don't have my dream house, that type of thing. So I struggle with that. Like, what does success mean? And what does that look like? I have reached different types and different levels of success. It just hasn't been consistent. I feel like I've had highs and a lot of lows.
What was a low that you think, like, as you said that when you feel like you're paving the untarred road, what's the low that as you're paving this road, you hope that others don't have to necessarily go through?
I struggle with that as well, because at the same time, I feel like everyone is where they're supposed to be at the moment, and maybe there's a lesson that I haven't learned yet, but I also strongly believe that I'm in control of a lot. Maybe not everything, obviously, but I constantly remind myself that I control more than I think, and that maybe I need to be more proactive, my work out there. It's like a struggle because I'm not a person that is constantly at every event. I'm not, speaking on every panel. I'm not posting every day, that type of thing. But I do think that there are more things that I could be doing to be proactive to get my work. And I would love to cross over to other platforms as well, in terms of maybe publications that you wouldn't necessarily think I would be in, that type of thing. Not necessarily publications. It's really about ads, commercial jobs, I would say, advertising, the chunky money.
Yeah, is that where I guess the bigger question is, like, where do you feel like the money, or where is the opportunity? I'll call it opportunity for photographers to really flourish if they get access.
I feel like the real opportunity, because it's nice to shoot celebrities and, that type of thing. I feel like real opportunities is to be able to cross over into advertising, ad dollars, because your work has a much longer shelf life. When you're associated with, the brands, you will be maybe on billboards, across the nation, that type of thing. I think that's what the real goal and striving to be. In addition to, with me, I really put a lot of work, especially early on, when I talked about the testing and developing models of colors books. I really put a lot of effort into showing us, which I think is apparent, showing us meaning people of color in a beautiful, in ways that we weren't necessarily shown in the past. So I have this other side where, being documented in terms of making change, pushing for real change in this industry.
And that work is important. So thank you for all that you have done, are doing. Because it's like you said, you literally are paving the way and it's like leaving your footprints for those to come back and study you. Like, people will be studying your work, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, that is. And, again, it's something that I was called to do. I feel like I was literally born to do this. And some of these questions, I don't have the exact answer to, because I'm still figuring out. Someone may be new and starting out and looking up to me, which is beautiful and fine. We're just at different levels. We're doing the same thing, just at different time periods and levels.
And I think it's so important that you are listening to that calling, because a lot of people are running from it, right? Like,
yeah.
It's once you accept it and embrace it, that's when, like, things really bloom and you really are really set on the journey.
It is so true. And it's like, not to sound, cliche, but it's like when you break through that barrier, that uncomfortable feeling, that, terrible shoot that happened, or, you really are better and you really learn and you get through and you see yourself in different ways, ways that you never thought that you would be able to make impact. I know that when moments come up when, for example, work is slow, for example, I always advise people to create your own work. And I know that's easier said than done, but I found that when I tried new concepts or new ideas, or maybe I presented an idea or a concept to someone, that started to open up doors, It's, you can't just sit back and wait. You have to be very proactive.
Yeah. So last question, Itaysha, before we go into our lightning round, okay? As you think back along this journey, this dream driving journey of yours, what's the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself?
I think it really surprised me to know that I can foresee a lot of things in terms of like trends or what will be accepted, ideas and concepts. For a while you're unsure, of yourself. So we spoke about being naive and just going with the flow and things working out because you don't know. Then it gets to a point when you really do know, like you learn a lot, and then it's almost like you revert back into your childhood or early self when you're shy. I went from like this really confident place to, is my work good enough? Is this? So I found that a lot of strength in figuring out how to relate to people visually, and my ideas being trusted, or concepts that I do where it'll be a trend like a year or two later. So I think I wowed myself with that. And it helps you to trust your intuition. Yep. It helps you to trust, your ideas. So it continues to blow my mind, really, when I discovered that that's actually a gift, just the natural ability to forecast trends, ideas, and concepts. Well, I was just going to say, it's not something that I studied or that I was taught.
So let's do a prediction. What do you think will be the trend in 2020? This is going to come out in the next 2 weeks.
You can't put me on the spot like that.
One thing. Come on. You are predicting.
I'm not Miss Cleo.
Well, I mean,
I'm Miss Cleo.
Well, then, what's something that you just think that, or what's something creatively that you want to try in 2020 then, that is going to pop off?
Something creative that I want to try that I know is going to pop off. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Sorry
for putting you on the spot there.
Yeah,
because I just wonder, is there something, because I always wonder, because I was even today, I was just doing a merch order. So I was just buying some gear wholesale to then take to my screen printer. And I'm like, let me go to Pantone. You know how they always have the color of the year? Let me see what the color of the year is. I think, though, from the stuff that I follow a lot of, beauty or portrait photographers, so people who are doing headshots and stuff. And I just hope there's some innovation in the space, because I feel like everyone's just oiling everybody up to the max. And then, just doing the same type of look, right?
That is true.
So I'm like, will oil still be the thing in 2020?
I think that goes back to, what do you, edging your foundation.
Yeah.
And, learning how to think visually, which I speak a lot about, and being yourself and not being a carbon copy. Because there's when you're learning, you kind of look in magazines and you say, Stephen Meisel shot this like this. Let me try this lighting. But at what point do you break off and you do your own thing? Mm-hmm. I think reinventing the wheel is tough, but reaching inside yourself and just thinking about what you truly are into, and finding maybe a different way to display that without. Because I do agree. You look at, a lot of these things and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And like I said before, a lot of people using the same retouchers, the same style, the same this, Yeah. I think it's really just truly looking into yourself, being authentic and what your messaging is. And that will show, that will shine through.
All right, so let's go to our keys to success, Itaysha. You know, if you
Okay.
want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So what do you think are 3 things that every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
I would say 1, your foundation, which I just spoke about briefly. Your foundation, meaning the core of what you do, whether that's shooting portraits or, you know, the knowledge of photography. I think you always need to be able to, like, when you don't know what to do, always revert back to that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I got that.
And then the second would be, for me, making sure that you're building relationships, authentic relationships, and following up with those relationships. Out of sight, out of mind is what I think.
And then let's the third one. What's a photographer essential? Something you need in your toolkit if you want to be a photographer or in this creative industry.
Like a physical thing, like a
physical
camera?
or like, I guess that's, of course you're gonna need a camera, right? Maybe this is specifically for the photographers. Like, what's that one thing too that you should be, you know, you should always carry around with you in your toolkit?
A reflector. That's my secret weapon.
I did a shoot with so my best friend was pregnant and I hired this photographer, one of my friends, to do the shoot, but I was her photo assistant for the day. But I was also trying to, because we did her baby shower, we did her photo shoot. It was a surprise photo shoot. Well, it was a planned photo shoot, but we were going to a surprise baby shower, right? So I'm here trying to make sure that stuff is running perfectly. And then she didn't bring a photo assistant, so she's like, Raina, hold the reflector. And I'm like, I don't see the light that you see. Like, she kept telling me I'm not holding it right, and like I'm supposed to see this gold. I'm like, I don't see it, Woodland. Yes. I do not see it. So you're never going to be holding the reflector ever again. So
that is a very important task, and you know, it took me a while to come up with it, but that is like my secret weapon, the reflector. You know, a camera and a reflector. You don't need much.
Well, thank you so much, Itaysha. Can you please tell our dream drivers where they can find you online, if they want to see your work, if they want to connect with you, if they're an ad agency and want to spend those ad dollars? You never know who's listening. My website is ItayshaJordan.com.
And my social handles, which I primarily use Instagram, is Itaysha at Itaysha Photo.
If you have these things that you're inspired by when you're kids, like don't give up on it, because it's all gonna work out in some way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's all gonna work out.
Yeah, that is sort of a tough lesson, because a lot of times it's like you beat things into, sometimes it feels like you're forcing it, right? And we're always told, don't force too many things. But I have been at points where, like, I want to stop. I want to try something new. And then, like, a job will come, like a big job opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's like all these signs come, like, no, that's not what you're meant to do, Itaysha. That, you know.
Well, here I am, because you mentioned it, I will be fair, and I'm going to send you something that I shot. And it's not like, it's really not, it's not, don't be too hard on me, but this is the same girl, because she's like my little photo muse, right? So I did like these 3 series in a row where I just played around with the filter. So I had the original shot, and then I had like these 3 different shots. I'm sending it to you now via Instagram.
Okay.
And the last one is where I tried to play with retouch. Now, I am not trained. This is just me having.
You don't have to give me any precursor.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I won't be too hard of a critic, because I think that, you know, critiquing too deeply is not good, because you might be ruining someone's vision, and you don't want to do that completely.
All right, so I just sent it to you. So this is what we did. This is what we came up with another day that we shot. This is me. I'm behind the camera on this one. Okay.
I see. The red is interesting. And actually, the original... So is the third one that you sent me the original color?
It's the original color. I know everyone
listening can't see.
Yeah, I tried to do I was practicing my skin retouching, because I was practicing some like YouTube tutorials, so it's not...
Okay.
It's my first time doing, like, I was just trying to see how to do airbrushing on the skin.
Yeah, okay. Well, it still looks natural. It's not unrealistic. And it looks really real, like it's not overdone.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, the red was an overlay because I had these series of photos. I'm like, let me just see what happens if I take the same photo and just do the same overlay on it. And it's funny how just doing different colors can create different moods for things.
Yeah, I used to shoot with like filters like that, red filters and different things. And experiment and try new things. That's the only way you learn.
Only way. Well, thank you so much, Itaysha. This has been such a pleasure. I know we really went over an hour. I'm sorry.
We went over. I hope that I gave you what you needed.
No, yes, you definitely did. You definitely did. And I'm excited for people to hear this because you have just been somebody who I love your work. And I was trying to think of how I first was introduced to you, and I remembered it now. My leak. I follow my leak in
my friend.
Curlbox. And I think you worked with her a lot, and I just saw that she posted you one time, and that's when I started following you on my own. So
okay, yep, Miss Teal.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Raina. Have a good day.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 231 with Itaysha Jordan. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend, guys. I say this every week, and I will continue to say it. Share it on your Instagram page, Instagram stories, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, email, wherever. Just pass this one episode along to somebody who you think needs a little motivation, a little courage to not give up on that calling and that dream of yours, okay? Of theirs. Because I really think it's something that a lot of us can easily get swayed to do something else when something's not going right or the path isn't so clear and we don't know what to do. Listen to Itaysha. Tell somebody to listen to this episode, and they too can feel just a little bit better knowing that someone else has been in their shoes and they persevered. Wherever you're listening, make sure you're subscribed so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. And if you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. I really do appreciate that. If you want to be part of our weekly newsletter, The Keys, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And quick reminder, guys, if you want to submit your story for our 4-year anniversary episode, please email me a video or audio file no later than December 28th, 2019. My email is Raina, RANA, @dreamsanddrive.com, Raina@dreamsanddrive.com. Clips should be no longer than 5 minutes. Send me something, send a note, send a reflection, whatever you'd like to share with the larger Dreams and Drive community. Please do so. Remember to include your name and plug what you're doing so that if I choose your clip, it can also be a way for you to get some kind of promo or just track people to your own mission, your own cause. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving. Don't give up on your hustle. Don't give up on your calling. You have a gift. We all have unique gifts. We'll chat again in episode 232. Bye, guys.